Honest community, before we dive into this episode, we've got a quick free favour to ask. If you enjoyed the Honest Property podcast, please hit like, follow and subscribe wherever you're listening from. It helps us grow, reach more people and bring on guests that you want to hear from. Thanks for being a part of this. We appreciate you more than you know.
Hello and welcome to the Honest Property Podcast. We're your hosts, Becky and Ruth, and we love talking all things property and business, especially about any topic that's about holistic wealth building. And on today's episode, we have the lovely Lynnette.
Thank you, ladies. Let's go.
So we know Lynnette. Okay, backstory. Ruth and I used to have a pet care business that we ran alongside our property business. We then later sold that business to a good friend who then hired Lynnette, and we also still help out with that business because we all love dogs.
Yeah, crazy animal people.
With dogs.
So we're in a WhatsApp group with Lynnette, and we're basically in communication nearly every day, and see each other for lovely meals twice a year.
Yeah.
But Lynnette's story is from the first time we ever met her in person. She's we were blown away. We're like, wow, this business woman has such a story to we just want to share with you. So thanks, Lynnette, for coming on the episode today. Do you want to take over from here and share from where it all began?
I know that sounds quite complicated, doesn't it? So basically, the person that owns the pet care business now is a friend of mine. And so one morning a week, I walk 6 dogs for her company. But my actual job is I am a fashion retailer and sustainable stylist and fashion journalist. So fashion and dogs are my twin loves. And I indulge my love of dogs one morning a week. And the other 6.5 days a week, I run my sustainable fashion business called Lovely's Vintage Emporium. And my backstory to that is that I'm very young, actually. In the 90s, I left university, moved to London and managed, by a very, very long story, to eventually get a job on a newspaper, and then worked my way up and worked on lots of magazines and newspapers, and worked for the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Express, Vogue, New Woman, Cosmopolitan. I mean, lots of magazines that don't exist anymore, like New Woman and Eve. And so, yes, I had a 20 plus year of working on magazines, newspapers in London, mostly specialising in fashion and beauty. And in that time, I bought and sold property as well. So that's how it ties in with you guys and your amazing property business. And then for the last 14 years, I have run, because I got disillusioned with the fashion industry and the way it is and how polluting it is and how everything has to be new all the time. And it's encouraging women mostly to buy things they don't need and they don't want in terrible fabrics, etc. I became completely disillusioned by that. And I had a 70s, 80s childhood of jumble sales and preloved with my mum, who also sews. And anyway, all of that put together meant that in 2011, I launched Lovely's Vintage Emporium. And up until this year, I've run it completely on my own for 14 years. In 2013, I won the UK's best vintage fashion and accessories website because I only sold through my website. So it's been hard. It's been a long journey and it's been really difficult. And obviously, I've had emotional support from, a partner and friends and family along the way. But until this year, I haven't been able to hire anyone. And finally this year I hired Emma, who is also a friend of the person who runs the dog business. So everyone knows everyone and we all help each other and it's all kind of sisters together in a way. And now Emma does 2 half days a week. So it's actually me and Emma who run Lovely's Vintage now. Yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. But I mostly now sell live on Instagram twice a week.
A business structure I'd never heard of people doing. It would be click to my website or order it online. Whereas I see Lynnette's lovely little face pop up on my phone a couple days a week, them showing all the beautiful pieces she's found, and people just buy directly through the live. And I didn't even know that was a thing.
I know. Well, I didn't know it was a thing until October 2023. And an old fashion industry colleague of mine, I just happened to see on Instagram that she was selling live. And I thought, what is this? And I watched her, and she is brilliant, but she was a beauty PR. She's not even a fashion expert. And I saw her like holding up these clothes and selling them, and people were buying loads. And I thought, wait a minute, I spending hours and hours a day paying models, photographing models, sat at my computer for hours a day, uploading to the website and then hoping that people will find my website and buy from me, when I can just use all my experience in the fashion industry. Plus, I did quite a lot of television presenting as well. That's another story. I used to be the fashion and beauty presenter on GMTV in the noughties. But anyway, that's something else. So I thought I could use all that your face.
You like multi-did, like
I love it.
So I thought I'll use all that expertise. And then I lost my nerve and thought, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm too old. I'm too fat. You know, all the other things, all the insecurities women have. So from October 2023 until February 2024, 4 months, 5 months, which is actually a sensible thing to do in business, I observed other people. I attended every single fashion live on Instagram I could. I watched everyone. I took notes, I did my prep, I did my research, and I researched the market, and I looked at YouTube sellers, and there's an app called Whatnot, and I looked at those sellers, and I just did what you should do with any business, really, actually, is do your due diligence before I dived in. And then eventually in February 2024, I took the plunge, and I just did like one a week for like the first 2 or 3 months, just to kind of get used to it and see what the market wanted, i.e. what my clients wanted. And I mean, it took a while, it took a long time to work out how to do it, how to use the tech, how to get people to pay you, what things sold and what price points. It's not as easy as it looks. It's quite complicated and quite difficult. But eventually I thought, I'm doing something right. Because I think my first ever live, I made like £250 or something, and I'd never done it before. And I was like, actually, that's all right. Do you know what I mean? I won't say what it's doing now, but in a year it has gone like that. And I go live 2 or 3 times a week, so you can work that out yourselves. It's a very healthy business now. The turnover is very healthy. It's amazing.
So how long are your lives, and how much time do you put in behind the scenes?
Oh, goodness. Being honest, I regularly do 12 to 16-hour days, and my lives are 2 to 3 hours. Yeah, it's of work. Because, well, if I talk you through it, you have to source the products in the first place, which takes time, knowledge, expertise, money. You know, there is no shop. I cannot go to a shop and buy vintage and pre-loved that my clients like and that's in my taste and that's at a price I can afford. I have to look everywhere and go everywhere. So yeah, basically I am their personal shopper in a way, aren't I? I've got a network of contacts. I know lots of other vintage dealers. I know lots of antique dealers. I've got lots of friends. So it's probably like your business. A lot of it is networking and who you know and who you can go to get experience from and who will help you and who won't. And so lots of vintage dealers buy lots of stock, but we all kind of specialize in certain things and we all know each other. It's been built up over a decade and a half. And so if somebody is an expert in 70s maxi dresses and somebody else is an expert in Art Deco scarves, we kind of know that. So if we're finding things that aren't quite right for us, we can pass them on to others and they might contact. So we all chat amongst ourselves in the community. And then I do house calls when I can. So, for example, your mother, obviously you've got the same mother, big sisters. Your mother might have a wardrobe full of pieces from the 60s and 70s that she no longer wishes to wear or use. And she might keep a few to pass on to you, but she might want to sell them. And you might say to me, can you do a house call and visit our mother? And then if that's successful and I go to see her and I buy from her, she might refer me to her friend and her friend. So I do a lot of that.
So creative. This is so creative. I love this. It's like it's like you're at an auction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just telling you some of the ways I source the stock. There's lots of different ways to source stock, but these are just some of the ways which is impossible for like the person in the street to do, which is what people are paying for. They're sort of paying for my expertise in the fashion industry and sort of who I know. And then there's the usual route. There's, you know, you can go to a million charity shops and you might find 3 or 4 things that are good, but that takes a lot of time. So I don't really do charity shops as much as people might think I do, because they're mostly full of Shein and Temu and New Look and
The boutique, or you see the boutique charity shops as well.
Yeah.
Those like basically like select, because you see those vintage ones. Like, what's the difference between going to a shop like that or using your service?
From my point of view, I can't really shop in those shops because they're charging the same prices that I charge, so there would be no profit for me.
Yeah.
So I can't really shop at them. If you decide to go into that shop, you could be in there for hours and hours and hours trying to find what fits you, what suits you, the type of fabrics, the labels. Whereas if you come on my live and you come on my live regularly, I will know that you are a size 8, 5'5", with a chest of 36 inches, a waist of 32 inches. And when I'm on my live, I can say, Becky, this will fit and suit you. Ruth, this will fit and suit you. Would you like it? And you can say yes or no. And I do that all the time. I know all my clients' measurements. I know their height. I know what they like. If you watch my lives, I will often say things like, oh, Becky, I've got this piece that you might like. Obviously, there's no pressure for you to buy. Ruth, I've got this that I thought of you when I bought this. And I genuinely do buy things with different clients in mind. And if they don't buy it, doesn't matter. If I love it, then somebody else will. So
I love it. And I think when I have watched your lives, I think it's so much more exciting than just walking into a shop or just looking online at a page. You're getting it feels like a bespoke service. And it's an interaction. There's other people there and you can see the comments and the little hearts going up and it's just a lot.
Yeah, they all chat to each other. And they sport, and it is bespoke. You are literally buying my 20 plus years of experience in the fashion industry. And I'm going out and I don't go to what's called rag houses where they have like stock that people just go and buy. I don't go to vintage wholesalers. And there's nothing wrong with that. I always say this, there's nothing wrong with that. Lots of people who sell live on Instagram, they go onto vintage wholesale websites and they tap in that they want 5 kilos of pre-loved clothing and they spend 200 quid or whatever, and the bag arrives at their house and they clean it and they iron it and they hold it up and they sell it. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's not what I do. Because also I wouldn't want to do that. That would not be very interesting for me. Somebody else has done all that sourcing. I like the sourcing. I like the hunt. I like to go and find the things. And that's why everything you see on my live will be like these pieces. Like this is a 1970s Laura Ashley dress with an original old made in Wales label on it, and you probably can't see it, but there's a skirt hung up on the door there that's a 90s, but it's next from the 90s, but the quality is amazing. It's heavy duty cotton, it's all embroidered. These are things I've hand picked. So that's what you're getting. So that's the first part of the process. Then, of course, I have to have the funds to be able to buy the stock in the first place. So you need to make sure your business account has a healthy balance in there, because even me buying it's not cheap for me to buy it because I'm buying good quality. I also have to check that the quality is okay. I still have to clean most of them, wash most of them myself. I sometimes do repairs. I have to steam them all. I have to measure every item. I have to price every item. I have to hang it up on the rail. So that's the physicality. Then I have to stand and sell it to my clients. And not only am I stood selling it to my clients, I have to chat to them at the same time, keep an eye on all the comments, answer all their questions on the live, and write down when they want something.
So fast.
Then I have to pack it all away when the live's finished and put it all somewhere. I have a massive stock list. Everything has to be logged. Then I have to invoice every single person via DM. Then I have to make sure they pay me. Then I have to pack it all up and post it. It's so much.
Yeah. Oh my word, Lynnette.
Yeah.
But the thing is that people see the extra attention, the story, the engagement, the excitement, and it makes every piece that they get from Lovely's just extra special. It's like if it was me and I knew that I was going to buy from someone who went through all that effort, and the energy that was put behind packaging when you open that package, compared to, like, I'm not much of a shopper myself, and because I just don't like going out to go shopping and then pick something that everyone has, basically. I think there's so much value in having something that's been personally picked, or on your live you're saying that I thought that would suit you, so you really thought about the other person.
I genuinely do, yeah.
Because a psychological, like, you've really hit the nail on the head with like the psychology of selling and an experience that makes it very exclusive,
which is what people want now, right? They don't want everything to be beige. They don't want it all to be just the same. The world is a global world now, and we all see the same things, and we often all live the same way. Like, we've got the same color paint on the walls. I mean, that happens all the time because of the way we live. And when you go into shops, if you go into high street shops now, which I go in all the time to research, I don't buy from them, but I go and look what they're doing and what the trends are and how they display them. It's my job. I need to know what's happening in fashion. Just because I sell vintage and pre-loved, I need to be aware what's going on out there. But what I'm offering is that bespoke experience, which is what people want now, don't they? And particularly your generation as well. You want experiences more than you want stuff, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
You value that more, don't you? You'd rather go canoeing than have an extra 10 dresses, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we'd
I know
rather
that.
one really good piece than buy like
piece that has a story behind it than, go to Primark.
no offense to Primark, but like when buying like
Yes, offence to Primark though. Those shops, I do not want to be. Well, okay, let's not necessarily say Primark because we don't want to get into trouble legally.
Oh yeah.
But fast fashion, generally speaking, having done lots of research and having written about it previously as a journalist, fast fashion, literally, most of it is produced by, 7-year-olds in China. I mean, there's no getting away from that, or India or places. It is fueling child labour, and there's no way around that. And the chances are, if you go into places like Primark, then you probably are assisting in that process.
Yeah. And I think this is why we love what you do, Lynnette, is because you're providing a service that actually makes people conscious buyers instead of just mindfully buying, not mindlessly consuming. That's the word, mindlessly consuming. Like Becky, we are a generation that care about the planet, and we want to see, our children enjoy it still, and we are very conscious about owning less but better. And the service that you provide completely fits that mold.
Yeah, and it's everything actually. It's not just the pieces. It's the paper I buy is recyclable and biodegradable. What look like plastic bags, I've got like a sort of it's all part of like the business branding, but I have these really lovely big plastic bags with like rainbows on, but actually they're recyclable. I reuse if ever I buy anything online for the business. So if I buy, say, from another vintage dealer and they send me their pieces in a cardboard box, I will reuse that cardboard box to send out. So if you get a cardboard box from me with clothing you've bought from me, it may well have, I don't know, the name of a nappy brand on the side or a dog bed on the side, or because it's been recycled. So I try not to hardly ever buy like new cardboard or new paper, or it extends to every area of the business. I handwrite cards, they're old Vogue postcards that I buy and I handwrite thank you on them to my clients. It runs across. It's not just the sustainable clothing I'm selling and the vintage and pre-loved clothing. It runs across the whole business. I've got an electric car, that kind of thing. You've got to live it, haven't you? Otherwise I'd be a hypocrite.
And that is what people are looking for now. Like you said before, like everything is so the same. We're all starting to look the same, and everything that we do is the same. And we're all like craving variety.
Yeah. And if you buy something from me, the chances are you're never, ever going to see somebody else wearing it.
Yeah, that just makes it so much more special.
What are the benefits of buying? Well, I think we've covered them, but just to clarify, like, what are the benefits of buying vintage over, well, essentially fast fashion?
You're saving pieces from going into landfill because we're keeping them in the economy. I mean, that's the most important one. If we keep these pieces moving and people like me keep dry cleaning and, well, I say dry cleaning, I mostly steam. I don't actually take things to dry cleaners very often because of the chemicals. So what I mean is steaming. So just to keep them in good condition, keep them in, if you've got something of value, buy acid-free paper to wrap them in a drawer. Buy the old-fashioned like cedar balls to stop the moths, things like that you can do. Because years ago, vintage was just thrown away. Like when women had enough of their clothes, quite often they were literally put in the bin and then it went into landfill. That was really, really common.
You weren't aware that it went into landfill? Or...
No, it was rubbish. If you'd finished with it, it was rubbish. You throw it away. Yeah. I mean, that's also on a completely different sort of, well, slightly aside. That's why there isn't much men's vintage. Because men and women have always bought clothes, but women have always wanted more clothes. And therefore, if you've got more clothes, you're wearing the ones you've got less than you would if you had fewer clothes. And men are buying fewer clothes, but they're wearing them more often. So a lot of older clothes from men from other generations has literally been worn out and then thrown away. So there is not much men's proper vintage out there because men didn't consume as much in the first place. And so what they did wear, in a way, they were better at it than women. I'm talking generally, obviously. But men have inadvertently been better at sustainable fashion than women. Now, there's a statement, but it's true.
That's because of how women have been, I'm going to say, manipulated.
Yeah. Yes. Patriarchy. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We need to look pretty. We need to, I mean, I'm just as guilty. I've come on this podcast with you and, I did not get up this morning and put this on and dress in this. I was wearing a t-shirt and joggers. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just as guilty of it. And I put makeup and jewelry and this pretty top on to talk to you. I mean, I should have stayed in my old Ramones t-shirt and joggers, really, with no makeup on if I was being authentic, shouldn't I? But I wanted to dress up because this is, it's kind of a business meeting, isn't it? So it's also how I've been trained to try and look pretty and look nice. And it was the first thing you said to me. The first thing you said to me, without even thinking about it, was, "You look really nice today."
You look really nice. I mean, you still.
But you didn't say, "How are you? How's business going today?" Which a man would probably say to another man. They wouldn't say to a man on a business podcast like this, "Oh, you look great today." We're all conditioned.
Because it's like there is no, like, humans appreciate other pretty humans. Like there is
You look.
like if I see a beautiful person walk by, I'm like, wow, what an incredible specimen of a human. Like, like what? There's nothing wrong with it either. And like we have eyes. Like I can't. Like you're like I cannot not appreciate things that are appealing to my eyesight.
Yeah, I mean, from a personal perspective, I've definitely been treated differently if I didn't make the effort. But then when I do, people really notice. I'm like, oh, do I look shit like all the time? But sorry. But there is a truth in what you've said. Is like, yeah, it's so easy. I guess maybe, or do women just compliment women more than men?
Yeah, do we dress for each other more than guys as well?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think we do. Yeah.
I think.
Although when I meet my male friends, actually, yeah, I probably don't care as much about what I'm wearing because they're not going to judge me as much or notice as much. Well, apart from my gay male friends, in which case I go all out.
Yeah, I think there's a difference.
Depends on the men.
Yeah, it is conflicting because it's like it is something Ruth and I constantly are at war with. Like in the same breath as when you say, "Oh, I just was in my joggers and t-shirt this morning." That's our natural state.
Of course.
And then again, when we have to shoot anything or create content, or get on a
makeup or
the only time I'm really putting makeup on, there is a bit of a glam tax that you have to.
Yeah.
Only really if you're a woman.
Always, because my husband's going to see some old friends this weekend. He did say, "Oh, I need to do some grooming before I go." Not quite sure what his grooming involves compared to mine, but so I think there's an element of just wanting to look okay and look respectable, isn't there? Particularly in a business situation, like you're going to be sharing this on your socials, and I'm representing my brand, and you just can't help it, can you? Really?
Yeah.
But I think it's managing that expectation. I think it is important to take care of yourself, and even your clothes and the makeup, whatever you have in your life is there to make you feel good. But I think it's also knowing the line when it's just maybe you're taking more time. Like, how much is your time really worth spending on something?
But clothes and makeup, or no makeup, but clothes in general, they are a statement of who you are as a person. Like there is an element of when you meet up with friends or with new people that you've never met before, that the first impression matters. Or if it's with friends that you've had for a long time, there was also an element, I think, where you could just turn up in your PJs and not care. But then there's that point of you didn't care enough to try.
Yeah, self-respect.
Yeah. But you cared enough to show up presentable for the other people. I think that we battle this all the time.
Yeah.
Because I could happily just walk out in my robe. There's like a...
Hey guys, if you're new to property investing, we know exactly how hard it is to figure out where to start. That's why we created the Beginner's Roadmap. It's your guide to mastering the fundamentals so that you can move forward with clarity and confidence. Plus, you'll gain access to our free community for ongoing support. Just hit the link in the show notes. Now, let's jump back into this episode.
But there is a respect for the other person, isn't it?
Respecting yourself.
Yeah, and yourself.
I do think that fashion does matter, though, and I think often fashion is denigrated, and often it's denigrated by men to put women down, but actually we all wear clothes. And in the UK, fashion, in terms of bringing money into the economy, it's the second biggest boost financially to the economy after the city. So after finance is the biggest sector, followed by fashion. So I think it's very easy because it is still mostly a female-led industry. Although interestingly, the CEOs of the big fashion companies, the big fashion designers are still mostly men.
Yeah.
The buyers of fashion are still mostly women. Women mostly even buy the clothes for the men in their households, if there are men in their households as well. There you go, nodding. One of you is nodding, and I do as well. I buy for my husband. But yeah, it's a huge industry. And I think it's very easy to put fashion down and see it as frivolous and female and everything. But like I say, we all have a responsibility, I think, particularly now we're more aware to be responsible around what we buy and what we consume in terms of textiles. And it does contribute to the economy. So keep shopping, but shop clever, shop better. Shop with your brain rather than just your gut. Do you know what I mean? I must have this latest. Actually, stop, think, slow down. You know, where will this fit into my wardrobe? You know, that kind of thing. I think it's worth actually going and having personal shopping sessions. The big department stores still offer them, the John Lewis's and things. I think it's worth. Sometimes they're free as well, or free with a purchase. It's worth having somebody who knows what they're talking about just to praise you and have a look and rethink, because you might buy less then as well if you sort of have a new way of dressing and adopting. And yeah. And also it should be fun. Fashion should be fun above all else. I bought this because I just thought it was fun. You know, there's no reason to buy a pink and black vintage zebra 80s blouse, but why not if it's fun? So yeah.
I think that it still boils down to mindfulness. Like generally with my own choices, especially when it comes to work, I don't want to overthink how I get ready in the morning. So then I can just crack on. If anyone's watching this video, I always wear the same thing when it comes to recording because it's just easier for me. But then I will have, so I've got like my core work. It's just like
Your core work
uniform, work from home uniform. But then I also have little pieces that are jazzy and like that just make me feel happy in my wardrobe as well. And there's a place for that at the same time. Yeah, I think the psychology of clothing is really, really interesting.
Lynnette, do you feel like, what have you seen in the fashion industry that's complete that from your experience from when you started from journalism to now with your business, what have you seen that's evolved, that's like with each generation? What's the evolution of buying?
It's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a big question. Well, I think it's probably not what you think. So I think if you read the press, you would think that women used to buy tons and tons and tons of stuff and used to do loads of fast fashion, and now everyone's buying vintage and pre-loved. But that's not actually the case. Unfortunately, the statistics actually show you that it's the other way around. So even in the business and noughties to some extent, women still only bought between 10 to 20 items a year at most, and this is just an average, and now they're buying 50 to 100. So actually it's got worse, well, because prices have gone down because of the slave labor as discussed before.
And like he did textiles at GCSE, so I did like learn a bit about like all of the industry. And also I think I watched a video that was part of my GCSE which was saying how we used to have 4 seasons and now there's like 14, or like there's like so many mini seasons. I can't remember how many there is, but like now we are constantly,
it's the need for the new. A brand like H&M, I think they upload something like 20,000 new styles every week.
Zara as well.
And I can't remember the exact statistics, but it is something like that. Whereas even in like my mother's generation, they would go a couple of times a year to a department store and buy like 2 or 3 things. So they might buy a new dress or maybe a new coat every other year or maybe a new skirt or something. Most things were made in England. Like most of the vintage I sell says made in England on it. And actually this is not being parochial or being, we must everything be English. It's not patriotic. It's nothing to do with that. It's to do with how many miles are being consumed by buying your fashion. It's to do with, is your labour force being paid correctly? I mean, in the 50s and 60s, when things were made in England in factories, there were unions and people were paid proper wages and they worked proper hours and they had lunch breaks. And a lot of the items were actually hand sewn in the factories, mostly by women, and they hand sewed the made in England labels. And the quality was higher. There was quality control, and so the pieces didn't travel very far. They might have travelled in a lorry to Birmingham, Manchester, London, but that would be it. and then people would go and buy them and they would all go home on a bus or they'd be on a bike or, so you've got to think about carbon emissions. And so if Zara or H&M are uploading 20,000 new items a week to their website, how much of that is being produced in the Far East and then shipped on planes? And so I think it's got worse. It's got worse since I started in the fashion industry. The articles I used to write in the early days were about buying good quality, about obviously still buying what you could afford, but maybe then buying less. And there was a heavy focus on designers, and there were set trends and there were set seasons, which actually helped women buy less in a way. Because it was like, well, the puffer coat is in for autumn. So you'd buy one puffer coat and actually the trends would last longer. They might last a couple of winters rather than there being micro trends like on Instagram. There's fashion micro trends all the time, which is all it is encouraging you to buy. I can even tell you what they are because I follow them because it's my job to know.
Yeah.
But I don't go out and buy the vintage version of every single micro trend. Like there was the Mary Jane flats, there's the leopard print at the moment, there was the bows on the front of blouses. I mean, the list goes on. There was the wearing your hair in plaits with little clips, there was the space buns came back. I mean, it goes on and on. It was skinny jeans, then it was wide jeans, then it was boyfriend jeans and mum jeans. Now it's barrel leg jeans. I mean, how many jeans do you need?
Funny because the other life that you have as a dog walker doesn't require.
Before we continue, here's a quick thought. Ever feel like there's just never enough time to focus on what really matters in your business? You don't have to do it all alone. As they say, a great team makes everything easier. That's why we've partnered with the Freedom Geek. Their talented Filipino VAs help us with tasks like admin and podcast editing, just like for this episode, giving us the freedom to focus on what really moves the needle. If you're looking to reclaim your time and to work smarter, then check out the Freedom Geek. All the details are in the show notes. Now let's get back to our conversation.
I actually walk dogs for an hour and a half a week. That's it. Isn't it, really? It's a 4-hour shift, but a lot of that's dropping them off and picking them up. It's an hour and a half a week. Although I have 2 spaniels myself, as you know. So I do actually walk dogs every day. But it's not very fashionable. But having said that, a mutual friend always says that I still look fashionable even when I'm walking dogs. So, because I've got this knitted like bonnet that I've been wearing this winter, which is very in fashion. Like, you see, I can't help
I love it.
Have you seen that? Yeah.
I want that bonnet. I've been saying to my husband, I want a bonnet, and he's like, don't you dare.
But do you know what? When you're dog walking or when you're out, it's brilliant because if you put a woolly hat on, like we've all been wearing for a decade, you get hot, you get cold, you take it on and off. But the bonnet, I pull it up and it keeps my ears warm and my head warm. And then I pull it down when I'm too hot and it's just a scarf. It's amazing. So there's the fashion journalist is still in me. And I did buy that new, I can't even remember where I bought it from, which is terrible, but I've worn it pretty much every day this winter and I will wear it next winter, even when they're not in fashion anymore. And I will probably have it for 10 winters, So that's my defense in my bonnet.
I love practical fashion.
I like multi-purpose fashion is like my favorite.
Yeah, multi-use.
Where do you think, can I ask as well, like where do you think like we're going to be going? Can you predict where fashion's going to be going, especially with like from
working from home
and from a environmentally as well, like where is it all doom and gloom? Or
I don't think it is doom and gloom. I think
ends up the podcast.
No, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry, but it's not what people say it is. A lot in the world, people have these views of the world, which is often written about by like journalists like me, where you read these articles online and they say this, this, and this, but the reality doesn't always bear the truth. You'll know that about motherhood. You'll have read every single thing about it, and then the reality will bear no relation to anything you've ever read, probably, or what other people have told you. You've got your own journey and your own way. And the thing with fashion is that the truth is, the statistics are still saying that more and more women, bless you,
Thank you.
are buying fast fashion, and they're buying more than they ever did, and they're buying more than they need, and more is going into landfill, and more is washing up on the beaches of Kenya and places like that, and in Mexico and South America than ever before. Now, I wish that wasn't true. But on a positive side, I do think that younger people, and I mean, even like the generation before you guys, I do think teens and even preteens are becoming more aware. And so I'm hopeful that they will go, enough, I'm not doing that. And I think vintage is a great thing. in some ways, not in others, because I think it's also encouraging buying a lot and selling a lot. And again, you've got the air miles and the postage and everything else. But I think it's a good start. I think vintage is a good start. Now, most people I know who would only have ever bought new do now go on there and buy. So that's a good start. But overall, it is gloomy still. The fashion industry, it's still gloomy. Until we can get people out of the mindset of cheap, it's not going to change. And when you've got a whole generation who are used to having a £5 dress turn up on their doorstep, why would they then go and spend £200 on a dress? It's really hard. It's really hard to change that mindset, you know? Sorry.
There's a lot of things to factor in. It's also just affordability of life nowadays means that people maybe just literally cannot have no choice but to buy that. Like there's I think a space for that as well, as sad as it is. I wish there wasn't, but affordability is a big thing just because cost of living's gone so high and people just...
Well, yeah, and that is a problem. That is a problem, isn't it? The price of food, the price of either rent or mortgages, everything has gone up. But you can consume less.
Yeah. You can still find amazing deals on Vinted, like just for £5 still.
I bought all of my child's clothes on Vinted because I just thought, well, he's going to grow so quickly. Why would I, you know? And I found some amazing pieces, some that weren't even used, you know, and I definitely will always say to new mums, like Vinted, was my savior.
Vinted is the version now of what my mum did in the 70s when my brother and I were little, because they were poor, but they weren't rich. You know, my mother was a teacher, my father an engineer, so we were middle class, but teachers and engineers do not earn tons of money. And cost of living's always been high. And actually in the 70s, there was an oil crisis and there was lots of strikes and times were actually quite difficult in being a child. And we didn't have central heating in our houses and things like, you know, it was not easy. Not like people always think that it was easier for the previous generation, but it's never easy. Life is never easy for any generation, is what I would say. And so my mum used to go to jumble sales, which is your equivalent of Vinted for your children. So I spent my childhood going around jumble sales with her, which is probably why I do what I do now. It's the equivalent. I am the jumble sale online, but curated and cleaned and sourced properly. And yeah, that's probably it, really.
I love that. That's really sweet. It's kind of a full circle moment, just maybe a moment in time you were spending time with your mum and you're just continuing that.
Yeah, exactly. So go on Instagram, check out all of us. There's loads of us selling on Instagram. Some sell new, some sell pre-loved, some sell vintage. And most of us go live in the evening. And it's fun. Just sit and watch a live and see what you think and buy from.
I recommend it. It's pretty fun. I'm like, who's got that? Do you have you feel like, you don't want to miss out either. It's really exciting and it just feels like a community. Also, for those listening, and Lynnette also is a property investor. She has her own property app.
Yes. Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
How do they tie into your life? Are they
But you have to fund a vintage business somehow, because you certainly don't become a millionaire from selling vintage clothing on the internet. So I was quite late to property, actually, because again, it was never affordable unless you had some money from somewhere to begin with, which is, as you guys, well, I don't know your backstory, but it definitely makes it easier if you can somehow get a deposit and you can start your journey. That definitely helps. And then it doesn't always work for everyone, but if you're smart and you learn and you understand what you're doing, then you can start building. And I think getting the deposit in the first place or sorting out your assets is the hard bit. And that's the bit where I found it really hard. So I left home at 18 and I moved to London when I was 24. And I still didn't own property. And even in the 90s, it was really, really hard. And in the noughties, it was still, particularly in London, it was just unobtainable. It didn't matter how much money I earned as a journalist. I could never earn enough to save a deposit and, you know, to be able to buy anywhere. So I just saved, basically. I saved and saved and saved. And I bought my first property when I was 34. Which was really difficult, but I saved a lot of money and then something awful happened to me that turned into something good. So I had a car crash. I was actually sitting in my car. I had just parked and I was working at the BBC at the time and I'd just parked in White City in London, Wood Lane. And I had just taken my seatbelt off, which is lucky. And a car was coming along the road and they just lost control. He doesn't know why he did. He just lost control of the steering wheel and he drove into the side of my car. And because I had just taken my seatbelt off, I went flying across my car from the driver's side onto the passenger side. And I got severe whiplash, which I'd never even heard of whiplash till I had that accident. The ambulance came and I was uninjured other than in absolute agony all down my back and my neck. And this was in 2001, and I was taken to hospital, and the radiographer at the hospital said to me, you should tell the insurance company because this is quite a severe injury you've got and you will probably get some money. And I sort of vaguely remembered that, but wasn't really sure what that meant, because you know how now people claim for it, just wasn't a thing back then. But anyway, I spoke to my insurance company, and because it was all legitimate and I had all the x-rays and I was properly injured, and I had to, and in fact, I still have problems with my lower back to this day. Now, my lower left back, I have to see an osteopath a few times a year, and they have to put me straight and put me right from the accident. So I got a few £1,000s compensation for the accident. And so that, topped up with my savings, enabled me to finally go and buy a flat. So that's how I started in property. So I bought a flat in Fulham in London, just a tiny 1-bedroom flat that was disgusting. It needed so much work. A banker had lived there and he smoked cigars, and the carpets reeked of cigars, and anyway, you know what it's like, these places. So I bought that, and I mostly did it up myself, you know, the paintbrush at weekends and all of that stuff. And I owned that for more than a decade. And then I sold that for double what I paid for it. So, and in the meantime, before I sold it, at one point I got headhunted to launch a magazine in Bath. And so I rented out my flat and I bought a cottage in Bath. Now, this is all about the things you do that are mistakes as well as the things you do that are good. So the flat in Fulham was a brilliant property investment. Actually, just going back a little bit, I remember all I could afford was either a 2-bedroom flat in not such a good neighbourhood of London with a garden, or a 1-bedroom flat in Fulham with no garden. And I remember certain members of my family saying, well, you should get the 2-bedroom with the garden, because what if you have children or you get a dog? And also, if you fall on hard times, you can rent out the other room. And I remember thinking, no, it's all about location in London. You've got to be in the best location. You need to be near a tube. And I'm just going to be working. A 1-bed's fine. I don't want to share with anyone anymore. I've been flat sharing since I was 18. I'm now 34. So I ignored all the advice and ignored the 2-bed flat with a garden in Tooting, which at the time was not the place to live, and bought the 1-bed in Fulham. And yeah, the 1-bed in Fulham was a much better investment. So, but yeah, so I then got offered this job in Bath. So I rented out Fulham and made sure, and the rent covered the mortgage and everything else. And then I decided to buy a cottage in Bath because I was moving there for this job. But of course I shouldn't have done that, because it was a job I'd only just got. I didn't know how long I was going to be there. My base was London. Most of the magazines are London. This was a one-off, and that's exactly what happened. So my first few months in the job, I had nowhere to live because I was buying the cottage, and you can't move in straight away when you buy somewhere, can you? Whereas if you're renting, you can. So I ended up having to stay with a friend of a friend, which was not ideal. And at one point I was in a holiday cottage because there was nowhere else to rent, because nobody would take me on short term. So I was in this holiday cottage in winter trying to launch a magazine in an area I'd never lived before and trying to buy a house. Honestly, it was terrible. And I only did that job for a year, and I got headhunted back to London. I'd only just bought this cottage. So suddenly I've got this cottage that is only worth what I've paid for it because I've only just bought it. And I've got a flat in London, which all sounds very spoiled, but, you know, I worked really hard. I was single. It was not family money. It was all what I'd managed to do myself. And I didn't know what to do. And so for a while, I kept both mortgages going, which was ridiculous. And I started sliding into not big debt, but I started using the credit card for food one weekend. And then I was like, no, this is not good. I don't earn enough to pay 2 mortgages and 2 lots of bills, 2 lots of council tax. So don't do that. But I liked the idea of having a cottage in the country and a flat in London, you know what I mean? And the walk car at the time, and it was all very I was a bit like Bridget Jones, but not really. And then I suddenly realised I cannot afford 2 mortgages, so I'm going to have to sell this cottage, because the amount you could rent a tiny cottage outside Bath at the time did not cover this new mortgage I'd got on it. And so there would have been, I don't know. It's difficult, isn't it? At the time, it was just a balance sheet. I just can't afford it. But actually now, of course, I wish I'd, But anyway, so I sold it, and I pretty much sold it for what I paid for it, 3 years after I'd bought it. The prices don't go up as much in little villages outside Bath as much as they do in London. Well, not in 2004, 2005, whenever this was. And actually, when I worked it all out, I lost money because of all the fees and the interest on the mortgage. And then I had all that stress, of course, of living in a friend of a friend's house and a holiday. It was just a disaster. The whole buying the cottage near Bath was just ridiculous and cost me money. And I only lived in it for like 6 months. So don't do that. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. So I just kept the Fulham flat. And then for various reasons, I ended up moving to Kent. And then with my partner at the time, and I won't go into details too much about that because he's not here to kind of, and it's privacy. But we basically bought and sold 10 to 12 properties over about 6 years. So, and we bought in Margate before Margate became big.
Flipping, were they?
Yeah. Some we kept, some we flipped. So I've got quite a lot of experience of that kind of thing. But we did it together, and it was mostly with, well, I mean, we were together, but it was mostly his assets that were funding it. But obviously I was the one that saying, well, actually, this is a really cool area because I understood that more than he did. And let's do it in these colours, and let's do this, and let's be fussy about what tenants we get, and let's treat them properly, and let's make sure that the bathroom, that the grouting is done correctly, because we don't want the water going down the side, we don't want them complaining, and we want them to live somewhere that's beautiful. Because I rented from 18 to 34, which is 16 years of renting. I understand what it's like to be somebody renting a place that's not actually your home that you own. And I think that makes you a better landlord. Well, if you're a decent human, it makes you a better landlord. So I used to fight with him quite a lot about that. No, do not put a cheap kitchen in there, because not only will they not like the cheap kitchen, it won't last as long, and it won't help the property appreciate in value if we want to sell it. Stuff like that. Let's go slightly higher value, or let's put IKEA units in, but then let's put a nice woodwork top or marble. Do you know what I mean?
Matching to make sure.
Yeah. So my fashion styling experience, I just transferred to. So for a few years, at one point, I did own 12 properties, but with him. So it's not quite the same as on your own, but yeah, I had that experience. And then when we were no longer together, all of that was obviously all sorted out. I'm just trying to be a bit careful for confidentiality, obviously. So that was all sorted out. And then we went our separate ways. And then independently, since I've been in Bristol, I've bought 3 properties. So yeah, I haven't lived in a rented property for quite a few years now. When we first broke up in 2012, I did move into a rented property somewhere, and I'd forgotten how stressful that can be. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard renting again after all those years. I only lived in a rented property for about a year while I got myself back on my feet. But I then got asked to leave because it belonged to an old lady, and the old lady was going to a home, and the family quite rightly wanted to sell it to fund the home. So then I was homeless. I was like homeless for about 3 months in 2012 because all the finances were being sorted out with the ex, and then the rental I was at, so even as an adult in my 40s, I had that, it's tricky, isn't it? So right. I think life can be like that. One minute you can own 12 properties and have a husband and a fashion business, and the next minute you could suddenly not have very much and be homeless, which I literally was. Now, I'm not saying I was homeless in the sense that some people are. Obviously I had savings and assets and everything, but I was actually homeless and had nowhere to go, and I had a dog and I had a fashion business, and it was tricky, and again, a friend of a friend stepped in, and I moved into her spare room for about 3 months, and yeah. Anyway, then I met my current partner and moved to Bristol, and now we own property together, so it's all good again. But it's definitely, so I think in total I have owned 17 properties in 22 years.
That's so amazing.
I've only lived in 5 of them, something like that. Yeah.
You're so enterprising. So do those properties that you have now, how do they offer you much support to pursue your passion business, which is in fashion?
No, not really. I have to independently finance that. Yeah. But the fashion business is a standalone that I look after. Yeah. And the property is a separate thing. So they are very much separate things. Where they did collide, though, which is an amazing story, which I can tell you about, is when I first wanted to set up my fashion business, I was with my previous husband, and obviously to set up any business takes funds, even if it's just from your bedroom selling. You've got to have some funds. You've got to buy the computer and the light and the rail to put the clothes on and the hangers. It all adds up, and the wrapping paper, and you've got to pay somebody to do your website and your even if you try and do it as cheaply as possible, you probably need a couple of £1,000, don't you, really? Do you know what I mean? And not everybody's got that. And when I wanted to set up Lovely's Vintage, I wasn't sure how exactly I was going to fund it. I was still a working journalist at the time. And I thought, well, I'll just put a percentage of my salary aside every month for a year, and then I'll fund it then. And then just fate intervened, because I still had my flat in London, but I was living with my then husband, and the flat became empty. The tenant moved out, and then I got a phone call. I did it through an agency. I didn't manage it myself because I was in Kent and it was in London. And also one of the big London agencies, they were just, I know not everybody approved, it was Foxtons. And I know not everybody approves of Foxtons, but for Fulham at the time, Foxtons were absolutely brilliant for me, because they absolutely had the best clients walk through their door who did have the money to afford my flat. And by then my flat was beautiful. I had decked it out beautifully. It's right near the tube. It was worth quite a lot of money. And so the rental was quite high. And there's no way I would have had the time or known how to get the level of client they had. And also their contracts were really done really well. If somebody had defaulted on the rent, it was all done properly, and I wasn't experienced enough at that point to be able to know how, like, you've had to learn how to do all that yourselves, haven't you? And it's not easy, is it? You can get screwed over. So I used Foxtons, and I got a phone call from them when I was thinking about setting up the business, and they said, we've had the mother of a trainee ballet dancer in America who's coming over to the UK. He's got a 1-year scholarship with the National Ballet or the Ballet or the Opera House or something in the UK. And he needs to be in the UK for a year studying ballet. And she's seen your flat on our website, and she would like him to rent your flat because she thinks he will love it. She thinks it would be perfect for him. But because she doesn't want him to not have any security, she wants to pay the deposit and she wants to pay a year up front. Is that okay? Let me think about it. And I think at the time, I was trying to work it out earlier, and this is 14 years ago. I think it was about £20,000 that she was offering. It was something like that. So, of course, I said yes. Signed the contract. Then, of course, there's Foxton's fees, obviously. So I think I ended up with about 17,000. Then I had to take my mortgage for the year out of that. Anyway, I think I ended up with something like £4,000 or £5,000. And with that, I launched Lovely's Vintage. So that.
Love that story.
Yeah. So the property did launch the fashion business, because I didn't have a spare £5,000, that I could have afforded to just throw into. And so I bought my first lot of stock with it. I bought proper rails, like proper metal rails. They're really expensive, proper clothing rails. I still use the same ones I bought 14 years ago. They're exactly the same rails that you see on my live that I bought then. So quality is important. And I paid somebody locally, in fact, a guy who lived opposite me was a graphic designer. We sort of learned together how to use Shopify. So we did the Shopify website. He did all the anyway, it did cost that 5,000 and more besides, actually, to launch it properly, because it was website only, and the website had to be a proper, 14 years ago, it was much harder than it is now to set up a premium retail website. And because of my fashion background, I was so used to doing proper fashion shoots. I mean, I don't do this anymore, and I only did it twice, but I actually hired like a proper professional photographer, hair and makeup, manicurist, models, for my vintage photo shoots for my website, because that's what I was used to doing on magazines. So when the website launched, there was a lot of fuss about it in the press, because no other fashion journalist at that point had ever launched a retail vintage fashion website. And they had also never launched one that looked, it sounds arrogant, but I'm just being honest. Nobody had ever launched a website that looked as good as that was vintage. So vintage before that, vintage websites prior to mine, they were either on mannequins or they were on coat hangers, or, do you know what I mean? It was very basic. It's like Beyond Retro is now. So Beyond Retro is a brilliant vintage brand, but you go on their website, it's very basic. Do you know what I mean? It's not singing and dancing. It is what it is. You can see the stuff and you've got the sizes and the prices, but it's not going to make you swoon like Net-a-Porter is, or Harrods website with Selfridges. But I wanted that quality, but with vintage, which was a new thing at the time, which I didn't know was a new thing. It's just what I did because of my background, but it kind of was pioneering, which is why I won the Best Vintage Website Award. So again, I learned from it. I never did those shoots after that, because you don't need to. You don't need expensive hair, makeup, photography. And also the advent of camera phones then started coming in. So I still had a BlackBerry in 2011, but by 2014, I had like an iPhone and I could take pictures myself, and, so tech helps you with business, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah, massively.
Yeah.
It makes you a jack of all trades, because you can do so many things in it. But I love your story, because
it's just a fantastic example
Of life
is
is
up and down.
What's it called, Lynnette? It's not linear.
Rollercoaster.
Not linear. It's a roller coaster, and you have gone through all the waves
As an entrepreneur,
Oh
and
my God.
personally in your life, and have still found creativity and joy from that at the same time.
and also just your story is a great demonstration how property, alongside what your passion is it can be used as a tool. So like, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to hold on to it forever. If you want to use it as a tool to reinvest in a business or contribute towards a business or a passion that you have, it can do that for you. You can refinance your property, relinquish some money, or your next tenant, like you said, could be wanting to secure it by paying for it all up front. Why not?
That's the only time that's ever happened to me, and it was when I needed to launch a business. It was amazing.
Yeah, so I feel like this moral of the story, if you get started sooner than later, because you really don't know when that's going to come in handy and help you later down the line.
Yeah. Also, the other thing I'd say is don't do property with somebody who you're emotionally involved with, because if that goes wrong, then you can lose everything.
Also, another life lesson.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that's what happened to me, but that can happen to one. One can be stitched up in a relationship, and one can lose all their properties.
Yeah, I think it's wise words.
I'm sure that must have happened to somebody along the way, so don't do that either.
Regardless of who you joint venture with, you need to
Be careful who you joint venture.
make sure all the paperwork and the legalities are fair. And
yes, exactly that. Don't let somebody put everything in their name because you trust them.
but
Don't do that.
So we like to wrap up our podcast episodes with an organic question, and it's one of those where you just complete the sentence.
It could be to do with life, to do with business, just to do with anything.
So the question is, honestly, the biggest lesson I've learned is...
the biggest lesson I've learned. Trust your gut.
Yeah.
Listen to that little inner voice that's nagging away, and your instinct is everything. It really is. You do know best. You really do, but you have to know where to listen to it.
Well, I love that answer. Thank you.
I mean, it's not an original answer, but
but I mean, even if it's repeated,
enough people think this,
and it's that much more important, and that message is that much more that you need to take heed, because it is something that is so easy. Even as often as it's said, people just don't listen to their gut.
And particularly in personal life, people often don't either. They do know, but I would say that, if you've got an established, steady, happy personal life like I now have, I think that definitely applies to business as well. There's lots of situations where, as you know, day in, day out, running your own business, it is high and low all the time. I have like some clients, majority of my clients are amazing, but every now and then you get mucked around and this and that and whatever, and you just have to listen to your gut and go with how you think you should deal with it. Always be professional. But yeah, that little inner voice, I listen to it more and more than I used to when I was younger. I used to ignore it and push it away, but now I go, right, what are you telling me? Okay, do that.
Yeah. I'm really quick now. I'm listening to it a lot better now than I ever did before, and learn our mistakes. So.
Imagine another 20 years, you will be a ninja at it.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks, Lynnette. Where can everyone find you?
The best place is www.instagram.com/loveliesvintage, OVEISVINTAGE, or you can go to my website, loveliesvintageemporium.com.
Okay, we're gonna put the details
in the show notes.
And you can find, and just check out a live. Honestly, it is the funniest thing to watch. Check out Lynnette's lives, and let us know what you think.
And if you want to buy vintage sustainably, then Lynette's your girl.
And also, I can help you with any styling. If anyone needs me to help style you for an event, I also do wardrobe clear outs. I can come to your house and I can sort out all your wardrobe, and I can put outfits together for you. I can go shopping with you. I can take you around the best charity shops in Bristol. Obviously, these are all things that people have to pay for. If people are interested, I offer packages where we can do like a half-day charity shop shopping, or I can take them to auctions and I can advise them. I can appraise for them. I can value things if they've got things of value, like if they've got designer, vintage. I can offer like a whole service because of my fashion background. There is a demand. You'd be surprised.
Thank you, Lynnette.
Thank you.